You stumbled into Dreadful Lullaby, a place where bedtime stories take a darker turn. I'm curious, what time are you listening and where are you watching from? Tell me below so I know where my little lullabies are reaching tonight.
The recording studios. The Sound City Studios had been abandoned for 5 years when Marcus bought it for a fraction of its worth. The realtor mentioned acoustic issues and scheduling conflicts, but at that price, Marcus figured he could handle whatever renovation was needed. He ran a small production company, and owning a legendary studio where platinum albums had been recorded was a dream come true. The building sat in an industrial part of Brooklyn, surrounded by warehouses and auto shops. 3 stories of concrete and soundproofing, with the main studio on the ground floor and smaller rooms above. Marcus walked through with his contractor, Danny, planning the updates. "Wiring shot," Danny said, checking the mixing board. "And there's water damage in Studio B, but the bones are good. This place was built to last." Marcus ran his hand along the vintage Neve console. Even covered in dust, it was beautiful. Any idea why it closed? Owner just walked away one day, mid-session apparently. Band showed up to find the doors locked and their master tapes missing. Danny shrugged. Music business is weird. The renovation started well. New wiring, patched walls, updated HVAC. Marcus spent most days on site, cleaning equipment and cataloguing what was salvageable. It was while going through the tape archive that he found the first anomaly. A reel-to-reel labeled Session 4B, Do Not Use. The date was from the studio's last week of operation. Curious, Marcus threaded it onto a restored machine and hit play. Static. Then, faintly, music. But wrong. The instruments were playing notes that shouldn't exist, frequencies that made his teeth ache. And underneath, voices, singing, screaming, the line blurred. He turned it off after 30 seconds, head pounding. Just a bad tape, he told himself. Degraded magnetic coating, but he kept it, filed separately from the others. The studio reopened 2 months later. Marcus kept it simple at first. Local bands, demo recordings, nothing too ambitious. The equipment worked beautifully, the sound was pristine, but there were quirks, phantom sounds in the recordings, whispers between tracks, instruments playing notes no one remembered recording. Marcus wrote it off as bleed-through from old sessions, magnetic ghosts in the machinery. He ran noise reduction, gated the problems away. The clients never complained. It was during a late-night session that things escalated. A indie band called The Frequencies was laying down their debut album. Marcus was engineering. The band was in the live room. Everything normal, until playback. The song they just recorded had an extra track, a vocal line, harmonizing with the lead singer, but beautiful in a way that hurt, using intervals that shouldn't work but did. The band members looked at each other confused. "Who sang that?" the lead singer, Amy, asked. "Nobody," Marcus said, checking the board. All vocal mics had been off, except Amy's. "Must be bleed from an old tape. Let me clean it up." But he couldn't remove it. The harmony was embedded in the recording like it had always been there, and it was perfect. Elevated the song from good to transcendent. "Keep it," Amy said, after a long pause. "Whatever it is, it works." They kept recording, and the phantom additions kept coming. Guitar solos that bent through dimensions, drum patterns that suggested rhythms from outside normal time, bass lines that opened doors in the mix that shouldn't exist. The album was incredible, also impossible. The band hadn't played half of what was on the recordings. "It's the studio," the drummer said during a break. It's adding things, finishing our thoughts, playing what we meant to play but couldn't. Marcus wanted to argue but couldn't. He'd been watching the meters, the inputs. Sound was coming from nowhere, adding itself to the recordings. The studio wasn't just capturing performance, it was participating. He started researching the studio's history, found articles about its golden age, the legendary albums recorded there, but also stranger stories, engineers who heard voices in the white noise, bands who claimed their best songs wrote themselves during sessions, a jazz pianist who insisted the piano played itself during a solo, his hands just following along. Then he found the article about Session 4B. A band called the Cosmic Architects had booked a week to record their experimental album. They were pushing boundaries, using prepared instruments, tape manipulation, opening doors in sound, according to their press release. On the fourth day, something went wrong. The band claimed they'd made contact with the musicians between frequencies, that their music had attracted the attention of things that existed in sound itself. The session ended with the lead guitarist destroying his instrument and the vocalist being hospitalized, speaking in tongues that audio experts said contained impossible phonemes. The studio stayed open, but it was never quite the same. Engineers reported equipment operating itself, recordings that changed between takes, songs that contained information, mathematical proofs, star charts, messages in languages that didn't exist. Marcus found the rest of the Session 4B tapes in a locked closet, 7 reels, each labeled with increasingly frantic warnings. He knew he shouldn't, but he played them in sequence. The devolution was horrible. What started as experimental music became something else. The band's playing grew more complex, more impossible, as if invisible hands were guiding them. By the 5th tape, the music wasn't music anymore. It was communication, something teaching them to play in ways humans weren't meant to play. The 6th tape was just screaming and the sound of instruments being destroyed. The 7th was 40 minutes of silence, but not empty silence, pregnant silence, waiting silence, the kind that suggested something was listening. Marcus turned off the machine, but the silence persisted. The studio felt different now, aware. The acoustic treatments on the walls seemed to breathe. The microphones turned slightly, following movement. The mixing board's LEDs blinked in patterns that resembled language. "You heard them," a voice said from the live room. Marcus looked through the control room window. A figure sat at the piano, translucent, fingers on keys that played no sound he could hear. It wore clothes from the 70s, had the gaunt look of a musician who'd gone too deep into the art. "Jerry Cosmic," the figure said. "The Cosmic Architects. We thought we were so clever, opening doors in sound. We opened them all right, and things came through." "You're dead?" "Am I? Hard to tell anymore. I exist in the frequencies now. All of us do. The studio recorded us and we never stopped recording." Jerry played a chord that Marcus felt in his bones. It's not haunted. It's inhabited by everyone who ever pushed too hard, reached too far, tried to find the music behind music. The phantom tracks. Us, them, the things we let in. The studio is a membrane between what music is and what it could be. Every session thins it a little more. Jerry smiled sadly. "Your band, the Frequencies? Appropriate name. They're already hearing it. The real music. Soon they'll want to play it themselves." Marcus ran. Out of the studio, into the Brooklyn night. But he came back. Of course he came back. The studio called, and he had clients, and the music they were making was impossibly good. The Frequencies finished their album. It was perfect, also wrong. Listeners reported strange effects, synesthesia, temporal displacement, dreams of cities that played themselves like instruments. The band toured briefly before disbanding, each member claiming they couldn't play normally anymore. Their instruments wanted to make the impossible sounds. Marcus kept the studio open. What else could he do? Musicians came, recorded, left changed. The phantom editions grew more bold. Sometimes entire songs appeared on tape that no one remembered recording. Songs that hurt to hear, but were too beautiful to delete. He learned to manage it. Shorter sessions. Grounded musicians who wouldn't push too far. Never let anyone record experimental music. Never let them ask what was making the extra sounds. But late at night, alone in the control room, Marcus could hear them. The musicians who'd gone too far. Jerry Cosmic and his band still playing their impossible session. Others who'd found the frequency behind frequencies. And the things they'd let in, the entities that existed as sound itself. Using the studio as a concert hall between dimensions, the mixing board would light up on its own. Faders moving, EQ adjusting, crafting mixes of music that hadn't been played yet. Marcus would listen, knowing he shouldn't, hearing compositions that redefined what music could be. Sound City Studios was open for business, but it was also open to other things. Things that sang in mathematics, things that drummed in heartbeats of dying stars, things that played instruments made of concepts rather than wood and wire. Marcus was their engineer now, recording the impossible, mixing the unthinkable, mastering albums that existed in more dimensions than the human ear could perceive. The studio had always been special. Now it was necessary. A recording booth for the music that played behind reality. A control room for sounds that controlled more than volume and tone. And in the tape archive, Session 4B waited. 40 minutes of pregnant silence. Listening, recording. Waiting for someone to press play and hear what had been captured when the cosmic architects opened doors that should have stayed closed. Waiting for the next band to push too far. Waiting for the next engineer to understand that some studios don't just record music. They record what music is trying to become. The mountain road. The GPS lost signal somewhere after Asheville, leaving Janet with handwritten directions to her cousin's wedding venue. Historic Thornfield Manor. Follow Route 421 past Miller's Curve. Turn left at the stone bridge. It seemed straightforward until the fog rolled in. Mountain fog was different from city fog. It didn't creep. It descended like a curtain, erasing the world beyond her headlights. Janet slowed to 20 miles per hour, following the yellow line, looking for the stone bridge that should be approximately 12 miles from the highway. Her odometer read 15 miles when she finally saw stone pillars looming in the grey. The bridge was older than she'd expected, barely wide enough for one car. Its stones green with moss and age. A sign read, Thornfield Manor, 3 miles, with an arrow pointing up a road that switchbacked into invisibility. The rental car's engine strained on the incline. The fog grew thicker, pressing against the windows like something solid. Janet's radio, which had been playing classic rock, dissolved into static, then voices, faint but urgent. Turn back. Bridge is gone. Turn back. She fiddled with the dial, but every station carried the same message. Probably an emergency broadcast about weather conditions. Mountain people were safety conscious. She'd come too far to turn back now. The road narrowed. Trees pressed in on both sides, their branches scraping the car's roof. In the fog, they looked like reaching arms grasping figures. Janet checked her phone. No signal. But the time read 6:47 p.m. Still an hour until the rehearsal dinner. A figure appeared in the road. Janet slammed the brakes, heart hammering. A woman in a wedding dress stood in her headlights, pristine white against the grey fog. She was young, beautiful, and completely dry, despite what must be near 100% humidity. The bride raised her hand, gesturing for Janet to stop. Janet was already stopped, but she put the car in park, kept the engine running. The bride approached the driver's side window. "Are you here for the wedding?" the bride asked. Her voice was strange, like multiple people speaking in harmony. "Yes, the Chen Morrison wedding. Are you?" "I was, will be, am." The bride smiled, and her face flickered like bad reception. For a moment, Janet saw another face underneath. Older, sadder, covered in moss like the bridge stones. "You're on the old road, the between road. You need to choose." "Choose what?" "Which wedding you're attending, which year, which outcome." The bride gestured to the fog. Thornfield Manor hosts many weddings, past ones, future ones, ones that should have been. The fog brings them all together. Janet gripped the steering wheel. "I just want to get to my cousin Amy's wedding. Today, 2020. 24. The bride laughed, a sound like champagne glasses breaking. Time doesn't work that way on the mountain. Not in the fog, not on the old road. She leaned closer, and Janet smelled flowers, roses, but also funeral lilies. Drive careful. Don't stop for the other wedding parties. Don't accept any invitations. And whatever you do, don't follow the lights to the old manor. The old manor, burned in 1887, wedding night, 53 dead. But on foggy nights, it still hosts receptions, still sends out invitations, still waits for guests who never leave. The bride stepped back, began walking up the road. Within 3 steps, she'd vanished into the fog. Janet sat frozen for a moment, then put the car in drive. What else could she do? The road split ahead, no sign, just 2 paths diverging. The GPS screen showed only grey static. Janet chose left, remembering Robert Frost, hoping it would make a difference. Lights appeared through the fog, paper lanterns strung between trees, warm and inviting. Music drifted on the thick air, a string quartet playing something classical. Laughter, clinking glasses, the sounds of celebration. A parking area materialized, filled with cars. But wrong cars. Model Ts next to Teslas, horse-drawn carriages beside modern SUVs, all empty, all covered in the same moss as the bridge. A valet approached, young man in tails. "Welcome to the Thornfield Ashbury wedding, miss. You're just in time for the reception." "I'm looking for the Chen Morrison wedding," Janet said. His face fell. "Oh, you're on the wrong layer. This is 1887. You want..." He counted on fingers that had too many joints. 2024. 24. That's 7 layers up. Or down. Directions relative in the fog. "How do I get there?" "Can't. Not directly. Have to go through each year. Attend each wedding. Pay respects." He opened her door with old-fashioned courtesy. "Park here. Walk through. Find your when." Janet wanted to refuse, but the engine died. Just stopped, despite her foot on the gas. The headlights faded. In the darkness, the lanterns were the only light. She got out, legs shaking. The valet took her keys with a smile. "Don't worry. Time doesn't pass the same. You'll make your wedding, if it's meant to be attended. The reception was in full swing. Tables set on a lawn that shouldn't exist on a mountainside. Guests in period clothing mingled with others from different eras. A woman in a 1920s flapper dress chatted with someone in a 1960s miniskirt. A man in Civil War uniform danced with a bride from the 1990s. Champagne? A server appeared at Janet's elbow. The glass he offered bubbled with light that wasn't quite liquid. I need to find 2020. 24, Janet said. Ah, future seeker. Follow the music. Each era has its own song. Find yours. He pressed the glass into her hand. But drink first, for politeness, for protection. The fog notices rudeness. The champagne tasted like memories. Not her memories, older ones, sadder ones, memories of fire and screaming and a wedding that ended in ash. Janet understood. This was the 1887 wedding, still happening, still ending, caught in an eternal loop of celebration and catastrophe. She moved through the crowd, following the music. It changed as she walked. Waltz to jazz to rock to something electronic. Each shift brought new guests, new decorations, new versions of Thornfield Manor in the background. Some versions were grand, some humble, some burned, some rebuilt. Looking for someone? A man in a modern suit appeared. He looked familiar, like her cousin's fiancé, but older, sadder. The Chen Morrison wedding, 2024. His face crumpled while, God, that one. Yes, I remember. I will remember. It hasn't happened yet for me. He pointed toward a gazebo strung with fairy lights. Through there. But hurry. The fog's getting thicker. Soon all the weddings will collapse into one. Janet ran. Through the gazebo, past a jazz band from the 1940s, around a disco from the 1970s. The music grew more modern, the clothes more familiar. She could hear Amy's laugh somewhere ahead. But the fog was closing in. The different eras began to blur. Brides from across decades stood together, comparing dresses. Grooms toasted with glasses that existed in multiple times simultaneously. The manor itself flickered between states. New, old, burning, rebuilt, never built at all. Janet. Amy stood by a modern arch decorated with succulents and Edison bulbs. She wore the dress Janet had helped pick out, held the bouquet they'd assembled together. But her eyes were ancient, aware. You made it, Amy said. Despite the fog, despite the old road, despite all the other weddings trying to claim you. Amy, what's happening? Thornfield Manor. It collects weddings. Everyone held here, could be held here, should have been held here. The fog brings them together, makes us all choose. Amy took her hands. Are you here for my wedding? Really here? Or are you still driving through the fog, imagining what it would be like to arrive? Janet looked around. The other weddings were fading, or she was fading from them. The 2024 reception solidified around her. Familiar faces, modern music, her rental car somehow in the proper parking lot. I'm here, she said. Really here. Amy smiled, fully present now. Fully 2024. 24. Good. Because I need my maid of honor. And the fog needs witnesses, real ones, to anchor the wedding in time. The rehearsal dinner proceeded normally. Almost normally. Janet caught glimpses in her peripheral vision. Other brides, other parties, other years bleeding through. The fog pressed against the windows, carrying sounds of celebrations across centuries. During toasts, the groom's father mentioned the venue's history. Thornfield Manor hosting weddings since 1847. through fire, through time, through everything, to continuity, everyone drank. In her champagne, Janet saw reflections of all the weddings, all the brides who'd stood where Amy would stand, all the promises made in this place where time was negotiable. Later, on the deck, Amy found her. Thank you for choosing the right wedding. Not everyone does. Some get lost in the fog. Some follow the old bride to the burned manor. Some dance at receptions that never end. Has this happened before? Every foggy night, every wedding held here. Amy looked out at the fog-shrouded mountains. But that's the price of a beautiful venue. You have to navigate the ghosts, choose your present, commit to your when. And tomorrow, the actual wedding, the fog will lift, the sun will shine, and only our wedding will exist. Amy smiled. Until the next fog. Then we'll be part of it. Another layer, another choice for lost travelers to make. Janet hugged her cousin, anchoring herself in the present. But part of her wondered about the other weddings, the burned one from 1887, the Jazz Age one from the 1920s, all the celebrations happening simultaneously in the foggy between. She'd made it to the right wedding, this time. But the mountain road was still out there, still collecting travelers, still offering choices between whens. And somewhere in the fog, a bride in white still stood in the road, directing traffic between possibilities, warning some, inviting others, maintaining the balance between the weddings that were, are, and might have been, all hosted at Thornfield Manor, all waiting for the fog to bring them together again. The hospital morgue. St. Bartholomew's Hospital was old money running on new equipment, a sprawling complex where cutting-edge medicine lived in 19th century buildings. Keisha took the night morgue attendant job because it paid for nursing school, and the dead didn't complain about bedside manner. The morgue was in the basement, naturally. Original brick walls painted industrial white, modern refrigeration units humming against stone that remembered gaslight. Keisha's shift ran 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., mostly quiet except for the occasional late-night arrival from the ER. Her trainer, Robert, had been specific about the rules. Check the log, verify tags, maintain temperature, and never, ever open drawer 19. Why not? Kesha had asked. It's complicated. Historical preservation. The drawer and its contents are part of the hospital's original installation. Board of Directors' orders. We maintain it, but we don't open it. Kesha had peeked at the log. Drawer 19 had an occupant. J. Whitmore, 1898, experimental procedure. 126 years of refrigeration. She decided not to ask more questions. The job was easier than she'd expected. The dead were quiet company. She studied her anatomy textbooks, prepped bodies for morning autopsies, fielded the occasional delivery from upstairs. The refrigeration units provided white noise. Even drawer 19 seemed normal, just another stainless steel front among 48 others. It was her third week when things changed. She was cataloguing a new arrival when she heard it. Knocking, rhythmic, deliberate. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS in Morse code. Coming from inside the refrigeration units. Keisha froze, then laughed at herself. Settling bodies, gases. Robert had warned her about the sounds corpses could make. She went back to her paperwork. The knocking came again. Same pattern, but from a different drawer. She checked the log. Drawer 7, Mr. Patterson, arrived yesterday. Heart attack. Definitely dead. She'd processed him herself. But the knocking insisted. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Gases, she said aloud. Just gases. The knocking stopped. Then clearly, a voice. Not gases. Keisha dropped her clipboard. The voice was muffled by steel and refrigeration, but unmistakably human. A live human. She ran to drawer 7, yanked it open. Mr. Patterson lay exactly as she'd left him. Pale. Still, unquestionably deceased. She checked for a pulse she knew she wouldn't find. Nothing. Down here. The voice came from below. Drawer 19. The historical preservation. The do not open. I can't, Keisha said, feeling insane for talking to a morgue drawer. It's against the rules. Rules change. I've been here for all of them. 1898. Do you know what they were doing in 1898? The voice was cultured, old-fashioned, impossibly clear for someone who'd been refrigerated for over a century. Medical experiments? Life extension, preservation. Dr. Whitmore, that's me, had theories about consciousness, about the gap between death and decay, about what could be maintained in the right conditions. A pause. I was right. Kesha backed away from drawer 19. This isn't real. Real is negotiable. I'm dead, also aware, preserved in the space between states. The hospital knows. Why do you think they keep me? Original installation, they say. Historical significance. But really, they're studying me, learning, waiting. Waiting for what? For me to teach them. But I only speak to the night staff, the ones who work between days, the liminal employees. The drawer rattled slightly. Check the old logs, not the modern ones, the leather-bound ones in the archive room. Against every instinct, Keisha went to the archive room. Dust-covered shelves held records going back to the hospital's founding. She found the 1898 log written in fountain pen. Dr. Jonas Whitmore, self-administered experimental preservation compound, pronounced dead, 11:47 p.m. Retain consciousness throughout. Requests continued refrigeration to prevent degradation. Board approved for indefinite study. The entries continued year by year. Different handwriting as attendance changed, but the story remained consistent. Dr. Whitmore, dead but aware, providing insights from his unique position, teaching the hospital things about death that only the dead could know. Found it? His voice carried impossibly from the morgue. Kesha returned, log in hand. You've been conscious for 126 years. Time passes differently when you're preserved. Minutes like years, years like minutes. I've had time to think, to understand, to see the patterns. What patterns? Death isn't binary. It's a spectrum. And in places like this, where so many die, the spectrum gets crowded. Drawer 19 hummed. Haven't you noticed? The movements in your peripheral vision. The sounds from drawers that should be silent. The way some bodies seem more reluctant to leave than others. Keisha had noticed, had written it off as imagination, exhaustion, the mind playing tricks in a house of death. But they're all aware. Not all. Most pass through. But some get stuck, especially here, where the boundary is thin, where Dr. Jonas Whitmore proved consciousness could persist. He laughed, a sound like autumn leaves. I'm a beacon. They cluster around me, the confused dead, the partially departed, the ones who need guidance. As if summoned, the morgue filled with sounds, soft knocking from multiple drawers, whispers in languages old and new. the shuffle of movement that shouldn't exist. What do they want? What everyone wants: understanding, peace, and permission to let go. Drawer 19 shook harder. That's your real job, not the paperwork, not the refrigeration. You're a shepherd. Night morgue attendants always are. We guide them through. I'm not qualified. You answered. You listened. That's all the qualification needed. His voice grew urgent. Mrs. Chen in drawer 12 died yesterday. Can't leave because her daughter hasn't said goodbye. Mr. Williams in 23. Holding on because he hid money his family needs. They all have reasons, stories, unfinished business keeping them in the gap. Kesha looked around the morgue with new eyes. Not a storage facility, but a way station. A pause between life and whatever came next. And she was what? A counsellor for the recently deceased? Start small, Dr. Whitmore suggested. Mrs. Chen, open her drawer, talk to her, help her understand she can't wait forever. Hands shaking, Keisha opened drawer 12. Mrs. Chen looked peaceful, but now she could sense the tension underneath, the held breath of consciousness clinging to flesh. Mrs. Chen, she whispered, your daughter, she'll be okay. She has your strength. Nothing. Then, so soft she might have imagined it. She's alone. She has family, friends, your lessons. You gave her everything she needs. Keisha found herself speaking from instinct. You can rest. She'll say goodbye in her own time. A sigh that came from nowhere. The tension eased. Mrs. Chen looked more peaceful now, truly at rest. One less soul caught in the gap. Good, Dr. Whitmore said. Natural talent. Night shift always finds the right people. Kesha spent the rest of her shift moving through the drawers, listening, counseling, helping the stuck souls understand they could let go. Some needed permission. Others needed forgiveness. A few just needed someone to acknowledge they'd existed. By dawn, the morgue was quieter. Not silent. It was never truly silent. But calmer. The confused dead had moved on, leaving only the peacefully deceased and, of course, Dr. Whitmore. Why don't you move on? Keisha asked as her shift ended. Can't. Won't. I'm the anchor. The proof that consciousness persists. The teacher for attendants like you. He sounded almost cheerful. It's not a bad existence. I've read every medical journal through osmosis. Watched the evolution of death care. Helped thousands transition. There are worse ways to spend eternity. Doesn't it get lonely? I have the night shift. New attendants every few years. New dead every day. The conversations are limited but meaningful. A pause. Will you be back tonight? Keisha thought about quitting. Finding a normal job. Forgetting this night of counseling the dead. But she knew she'd return. The morgue needed her. The confused dead needed her. And maybe she needed them. Their perspective on life from the other side. I'll be back, she said. Good. Tomorrow we'll discuss the special cases. The ones who refuse to leave. The ones who've been here almost as long as me. His voice carried a warning. And perhaps, if you're ready, I'll tell you why drawer 19 must never be opened. Why seeing me would change everything. Why some consciousness is better left preserved. Keisha locked the morgue, headed home through dawn light. She'd taken the job for tuition money. She'd gotten an education in the mechanics of death, the persistence of consciousness, the thin places where life and death negotiated their boundaries. St. Bartholomew's Hospital carried on above her, saving lives, losing others. And in the basement, in the morgue, the night shift would continue, shepherding souls, counseling the confused dead, learning from Dr. Jonas Whitmore, who discovered the gap between death and decay and chosen to inhabit it forever. Some jobs were about more than money, some were about maintaining the balance between worlds, and some were about talking to the dead, helping them find peace, one drawer at a time. The Antique Shop. Memento Mori Antiques occupied a narrow building wedged between a coffee shop and a yoga studio in the gentrified part of Portland. Sophia inherited it from her great-aunt Constance, along with a brass key, a leather journal, and a warning. Some items choose their owners, let them. The shop was a labyrinth of forgotten treasures. Victorian furniture crowded against Art Deco lamps. Military memorabilia shared shelves with porcelain dolls. Everything had a yellow tag with a price and a red tag with a date. Not the date of manufacture, but the date of acquisition. Some red tags went back to the 1920s. "Your aunt was particular about inventory," said Mr. Hartwell, the elderly lawyer handling the estate. "Never sold certain items. Said they weren't ready to leave yet." Sophia spent her first week just cataloguing. The basement alone held thousands of items, many with those ancient red tags. A music box from 1923, a mirror from 1936, a taxidermied raven from 1941. All priced to sell, but apparently never sold. She decided to start fresh, marking down the oldest items for a clearance sale. The music box was first, a beautiful piece with a dancing ballerina. She changed the price from $200 to $50 and set it in the window display. That night, she woke to music. Faint, tinny, the exact melody the music box played. She lived in the apartment above the shop, and sound carried strangely in old buildings. Probably someone on the street with a similar box. The next morning, the music box was back in the basement, on its original shelf. Price tag reading $200 again. Sophia checked the security footage. At 3:17 a.m., the camera showed the music box simply vanishing from the window. No one moved it. It just faded out, then faded back in downstairs. She watched it 5 times, sure the digital file was corrupted. She brought the music box back upstairs, locked it in the office. That night, the music was louder, and in the morning, it was back in the basement again. This time, with a note tucked under its base. Not ready. 1923 waits. The items have histories, Mr. Hartwell explained when she called. Your aunt understood. Some are just objects, others are inhabited, connected. They stay until they're ready to complete their stories. That's insane. That's retail in the antique business. Your aunt kept detailed notes. The journal I gave you, it's not just inventory, it's instructions. Sophia found the entry for the music box. Property of Elizabeth Harmon, suicide 1923. Played while she wrote her farewell letter. Will leave when her great-granddaughter comes looking for family history. Do not force sale. She flipped through more entries. Every item with an old red tag had a story, a tragedy, an unfinished chapter, and predictions about when they'd finally sell. The shop is a waiting room, her aunt had written in the front of the journal. We are merely custodians. The items know their schedules. Sophia tried to run the shop normally. Customers came, bought the regular inventory, but they also asked about the tagged items, were drawn to them, and always the items rejected the sale. A businessman reached for the 1936 mirror and jerked back, claiming it was ice cold. A teenager tried to buy the taxidermied raven, but couldn't get her credit card to work. Any credit card. Even cash disappeared from her wallet when she tried to pay. The items chose their moments, their buyers, their exits. Then Mrs. Patterson arrived. She was 90, if she was a day, supported by a walker but with sharp eyes. She moved through the shop purposefully, heading straight for the basement stairs. "Can I help you?" Sophia asked. "I'm looking for a music box. My grandmother's. She left it here in 1923. Sophia's heart raced. She led Mrs. Patterson to the basement, to the persistent music box. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma Elizabeth's. I heard it played while she touched the box gently. My mother could never speak of it. Too much shame. But I've been researching our family history. Found records that mentioned this shop." The music box was warm under her fingers. The price tag fluttered, changed from $200 to paid in full, 1923. Mrs. Patterson lifted it easily, cradled it like a baby. "How much?" she asked. "It's already yours," Sophia said, understanding now. "It's been waiting for you." Mrs. Patterson left with the music box, and that night, Sophia's apartment was quiet. One item had found its way home, but there were hundreds more in the basement, waiting for their moments. She dove into the journal, learning each item's story. The mirror waited for a descendant of the woman who'd seen her husband's death in its surface. The raven would leave with a poet who needed inspiration from darkness. Each item was a bookmark in someone's story, waiting for the page to turn. Customers began arriving with increasing frequency. Not random browsers, but people pulled by invisible threads. They'd enter looking confused, saying things like, "I don't know why I'm here," or "I dreamed about this place." A young man found a pocket watch that had belonged to his grandfather, lost in a poker game in 1953. A bride discovered her great-grandmother's wedding veil, sold to pay for a funeral in 1967. Each item recognized its person, released its hold, completed its vigil. But new items arrived too. Estate sales, donations, mysterious packages with no return address. Sophia catalogued them, sensing immediately which were just antiques and which were waiting. The waiting items had presence. They hummed with unfinished business. A typewriter that typed messages when no one was watching. A camera that developed photos of people who weren't there when the picture was taken. A telephone that rang with calls from numbers that had been disconnected for decades. "Why our shop?" Sophia asked the empty air one night. The building itself seemed to answer. Walls that had absorbed stories for a century. Foundations that touched something deeper than Portland soil. The shop wasn't just a business. It was a lighthouse for lost things, a magnet for items with unfinished stories. She found her aunt's final note tucked behind the register. "The shop chose our family as we chose it. We are librarians of the physical, custodians of memory made manifest. Every item is a ghost waiting for resurrection. Our job is patience." Sophia settled into the rhythm. Days of normal sales, nights of supernatural inventory. She learned to read the items, to sense their stories. Some were tragic, suicide notes hidden in the book bindings, murder weapons disguised as decorative pieces. Others were loving. Engagement rings waiting to complete interrupted proposals. Baby shoes hoping to find their grown owners. The most disturbing were the mirrors. Not just the 1936 one, but a whole collection in a locked room behind the basement. Each showed reflections that weren't quite right. Faces that aged while you watched. Rooms that existed in different decades. warnings written in condensation that appeared without breath to fog them. The mirrors remember, her aunt's journal explained, every face, every moment. They're portals to when they were made, windows to their histories. Sell only to those who need to see the past, never to those running from it. One night, Sophia woke to noise from the shop. Not music this time, conversation. Multiple voices, speaking in different decades' slang. She crept downstairs to find the items active. The typewriter clacked out messages. The telephone rang and answered itself. The mirrors showed parties from the 1920s, wartime meetings from the 1940s, protest planning from the 1960s. The shop was remembering, replaying all the moments its inventory had witnessed. "We are memory," a voice said from everywhere and nowhere. Kept safe until needed, preserved until claimed. You are our keeper now. Sophia understood. The shop wasn't haunted. It was an archive, not of papers or data, but of physical memory. Objects that held crucial moments, waiting to complete their purposes. And she was the archivist, matching items to seekers, stories to endings. She returned to bed, accepting her inheritance fully. Below, the items settled into patient waiting. Tomorrow would bring new seekers, new completions, and new arrivals, fresh with recent tragedy or joy, beginning their vigil on the shelves. Memento mori, antiques. Remember death, the name said. But really, it meant remember life. Remember the moments that clung to objects. Remember the stories that needed endings. And in a narrow shop in Portland, wedged between the modern world's coffee and yoga, the past waited patiently for the future to claim it, one red-tagged item at a time. The Desert Motel. The Saguaro Arms Motel materialized out of the Arizona darkness like a fever dream. Its neon sign the only light for 50 miles on Highway 191. Dale's GPS showed nothing, but his gas gauge showed empty, and the desert didn't care about digital maps. He pulled into the gravel lot, grateful to find civilization. The motel was classic Americana, single story, doors facing the parking lot, probably built when Route 66 was king. The office glowed with warm light, and through the window, he could see a clerk reading a newspaper. The bell above the door chimed when Dale entered, but the clerk didn't look up. Middle-aged, Hawaiian shirt, the kind of guy who'd managed desert motels since birth. "Need a room," Dale said. "Number 6 is ready." The clerk slid a key across the counter, an actual key, not a card. Continental breakfast starts at 7. Pools close for maintenance. How much? Pay when you leave, based on length of stay. Odd, but Dale was too tired to argue. He'd been driving for 12 hours, fleeing a bad breakup in Phoenix, heading nowhere in particular, just away. Room 6 was trapped in 1978. Wood paneling, orange bedspread, TV with knobs. But it was clean, and the air conditioner worked. Dale showered off the road dust, collapsed into bed, and dreamed of highways that went in circles. He woke to sunlight and the sound of splashing. Through the curtain, he could see the pool, definitely not closed for maintenance. A family played in the crystal water, their laughter bright as the morning. Dale checked his phone. 11 a.m. He'd slept 14 hours. The office was empty when he went to complain about the pool lie. A different newspaper lay on the counter, but something was off. The date read June 15, 1982. Must be a novelty item, part of the motel's vintage charm. Dale grabbed what passed for continental breakfast, stale donuts and burnt coffee from the lobby. Other guests nodded pleasantly. Normal people, except their clothes were wrong. Not vintage trying to be cool, but actually vintage, like they'd stepped out of different decades and gathered for breakfast. First time? A woman in a 1960s sundress asked. At the motel? Yeah. She laughed, but it sounded sad. Time's funny in the desert. You'll understand soon enough. Dale wanted to ask what she meant, but she'd already drifted away. He returned to his room, planning to pack and leave. But his car wouldn't start. The engine turned over fine, just wouldn't catch. He popped the hood. Everything looked normal. Car trouble? A man in a mechanic's jumpsuit appeared. I'm Roy. I can take a look. Roy tinkered for 20 minutes before shaking his head. Needs a part. Have to order it from Phoenix. Might take a day or two. Desert's hard on vehicles. Is there a bus? Uber? Anything? Roy laughed. Out here. You're at the Saguaro Arms until your car's fixed. Don't worry. It's a good place to wait. Dale spent the day by the pool, which was definitely open, despite what the night clerk had said. He met other guests, all with similar stories. Car trouble, waiting for parts. Been here a few days. Everyone seemed content, peaceful even, but nobody could give him a straight answer about when they'd arrived. That night, different clerk. Young woman, 1950s style uniform. Same routine. She gave him a key to room 6, said he could pay when he left. When Dale protested, he already had room 6. She looked confused. You just checked in, sir. I watched you drive up. Dale showed her his key. She showed him the register. His name wasn't there. According to the motel's records, he was just arriving. The date on the register, May 30th, 1967. He ran back to room 6. His stuff was gone. The room was pristine, ready for a new guest. His car sat in the lot, dusty but functional. The gas gauge read empty, just like when he'd arrived. Time loop, he muttered, then laughed at the absurdity. But what else explained it? He was reliving his arrival, but with memories intact. A knock on his door, the woman in the sundress, but she looked different. Older, younger, both. You're starting to see, she said. The motel exists in every year simultaneously. We're all checking in, always, at different points in time. June 15th, 1982 for me. May 30th, 1967 for you. Others have other dates. That's impossible, is it? You drove out of 2020. 24, but when did you arrive? Really arrive? Check your phone. No signal, but the date read May 30th, 1967. The phone itself looked wrong, like a smartphone dreaming it was a rotary. Dale's head spun. The desert, the woman continued, has thin places, spots where time pools instead of flows. The Saguaro Arms sits on one, always has, probably always will. How do I leave? Leave? She looked genuinely puzzled. Why would you leave? It's peaceful here. No past to run from, no future to fear. Just the eternal now of arrival. Dale pushed past her, ran to his car. It started immediately. He peeled out, drove into the desert night. The motel's lights faded in his mirrors. He drove for what felt like hours, watching for any sign of civilization. Lights appeared ahead, neon. The Saguaro Arms Motel, its sign welcoming him. His gas gauge read empty. He tried again, and again. East, west, north, south. Every direction led back to the motel. Every escape attempt ended at the same gravel lot, same neon sign, same empty tank. The desert decides, Roy the mechanic explained the next morning. Or was it the same morning? Some folks need to be here, running from something, running to something. The motel gives them a place to stop, to rest, to exist outside the race. For how long? Long as you need. Betty there. She arrived in 1954, still processing her husband's death. Jim came in 89, avoiding a prison sentence that may or may not be waiting. We all have our reasons, our times. Dale explored the motel's boundaries. It had more rooms than seemed possible from outside. A restaurant that served food from every decade. A gift shop selling postcards from cities that changed names depending on when you looked. He met more guests. Some had been there days, some decades. All remembered arriving recently. All were waiting for something. Car parts, bus schedules, weather to clear. None seemed bothered by the wait. It's not a prison, the sundress woman, Clara, told him. It's a pause button. When you're ready to press play again, you will. The desert knows. Dale tried to track time. Impossible. His phone showed May 30th, 1907. The newspapers showed different dates. Calendars contradicted themselves. Only the cycle remained constant. Arrive, check in, try to leave, arrive again. But the loops weren't identical. Each time, he noticed new details. Different guests, different conversations. Like the motel was showing him every possible version of his stay, letting him explore variations. In one loop, he helped Roy fix a '57 Chevy. In another, he learned Clara's husband had died in Korea. He played cards with traveling salesmen from the tavern 70s, discussed philosophy with hippies from the 60s, shared stories with dot-com refugees from the 90s. We're all running, he realized one night. Or the same night, repeated. Everyone here is fleeing something. Or running to something, Clara corrected. Sometimes the same thing. The motel sorts us out, gives us time to understand which direction we're really going. Dale thought about Phoenix, about Sarah, the relationship that had exploded, the life he'd abandoned. Was he running from or toward? The distinction blurred like everything else at the Saguaro Arms. Slowly, the loops became less about escape and more about understanding. Each arrival taught him something. Each conversation with timeless guests offered perspective. The motel wasn't trapping him. It was holding him until he was ready to move forward instead of just away. One morning, every morning, he didn't try to leave. Sat by the pool instead, talking to a businessman from 1973 about choices and consequences. The man had embezzled funds, fled his life, been at the motel ever since, paying for a room he could never afford to leave. But I'm not paying, Dale said. Aren't you? Every loop, every repeated arrival. You're paying with the only currency that matters here. Time, attention, understanding. Dale understood then. The motel was therapy, purgatory, sanctuary, a place outside time for people who needed to step out of their timelines. Some stayed forever, content in the loop. Others processed their shit and moved on. He made a decision. The next loop. Or was it the first? He didn't run, didn't check out, didn't try to leave. Just walked to the office and asked the clerk, what if I want to stay? Really stay? Not just loop, but live? The clerk smiled. For the first time, Dale noticed the name tag. Dale, night manager. Then you stop being a guest, future Dale said, and start being staff. Someone has to run the motel. Keep the lights on for the runners. Been waiting for you to figure that out. Dale looked at his future self, understanding completely. The motel needed keepers, people who'd run and stopped, who could help others through their own temporal loops. He took the manager vest his future self offered. When do I start? You already have. You always have. Welcome to the Saguaro Arms, where checkout time is whenever you're ready, and it's always time to check in. Dale settled into his new role, night manager at a motel unstuck in time, greeting runners from every era, giving them rooms to rest, watching them loop until they found their answers. Some stayed, some left, some became staff, and in the desert, the Saguaro Arms Motel glowed with neon promise, a refuge for the temporally displaced, a pause in the journey, a place where running to and running from met in the eternal now of arrival. Dale worked the night shift, checking in guests who didn't know yet they'd never really check out. Not until they were ready. Not until the desert decided they'd run far enough. The motel waited, patient as saguaro cacti, for the next headlights to emerge from the darkness, the next runner to need a room outside time.
There was always room 6 available, always would be.
Check-in time whenever you arrive, check-out time whenever you're ready, length of stay as long as it takes.